Welcome to Peak TV. I'm Niv Dagan, Executive Director of Peak Asset Management, and we've got all the way from Perth, CEO of Isotina, Matt McFarlane. Matt, nice to meet you.
Oh, great to connect, Niv. Thanks very much for having me on the show.
Matt, tell us a little bit about the company and what you do.
Yeah, so Isotina is a video analytics company. What that means is we build software that analyzes video footage coming out of generally surveillance cameras. Our typical clients will have 50 to 1,500 surveillance cameras coming into a control room, and our software analyzes that footage, learns movement patterns, and then reports anomalous movement patterns. So it's kind of like movement detection on steroids.
Wow, movement detection on steroids. And how big is the market? I mean, must be a huge market, the surveillance market, and obviously with algorithms and machine learning as well.
Yeah, so we use AI technology to understand what's going on in front of the cameras, and it's a very fast-growing market. So the global video surveillance market in the analytics space is growing at about 19% per annum. It's already worth about $12 billion globally. A lot of that's going into facial recognition, identifying people with and without face masks, etc. The stuff you read about on TV. But what's exciting for us is that there's an increasing number of customers out there who are actively thinking about how can they turn their surveillance network from something that has just been recording footage historically to something that's actively surveilling and doing the job for them in real time.
And Matt, who are your customers? I suspect they are larger organisations. Tell us a little bit about who the use cases are.
Yeah, so our initial market was in the campus surveillance space, so university sector. It's a very interesting space for us. A lot of cameras on universities protecting the students, etc. But also casinos and retail malls. So large shopping malls, particularly in the Middle East. We've got a very, very large customer over there who has about 15 shopping malls dotted around the Middle East that are very actively surveilled. But there's some new sectors too, like city surveillance, public safety, and prisons. They're all areas that are interesting for us. But you would be amazed to hear how often surveillance cameras are used just in the corporate context. It's a really, really interesting and fast-growing market.
And just the competitive landscape. I mean, what's your unique selling proposition over your competitors, and what really sets you apart?
Yeah, so when we pitch to customers, the feedback we get is that we are quite unique in the way that we go about things. The vast bulk of our customers use what we call rules-based analytics, which is you get a use case from the customer, you build a rule to solve that use case. So take facial recognition. The rule is if somebody's face matches this database of faces I give to you, then I want to get an alert, and I want that flashing on the screen. I want you to tell me about it. Another example is a virtual tripwire along a fence line. So you might create and draw a virtual line along the top of a fence, and if somebody crosses over that line, or even if a bird lands on that fence, it's going to light up and say there's movement along the top of that fence line. That's a rule where you're saying, this is the thing I want. If this, then that. Then tell me this alert, right? What Isotina does is it spends 2 weeks understanding what's happening in front of each individual camera. It creates a model of what it expects to see, and then it starts reporting anything weird. So in computer programming language, instead of saying if this, then that, it's if else. If anything's different, tell me about it, right? And so we pick up a broad range of things, literally an infinite number of things. So it could be an explosion. You could never write a piece of code to pick up an explosion. It could be, an active shooter and people running away from a violent act. It can be a fire. It can be smoke. It can be people having a bit of a rumble with each other. It can just be somebody who's messing about, climbing up the side of a wall, or doing some graffiti. So we pick up this broad range of different events, and that's our main competitive differentiator. If you are thinking about stepping into the world of active surveillance, Isotina is a really good first step.
Matt, interestingly, there is a NASDAQ competitor of yours. It's trading at 33 times sales, I think 65 times ARR. Can you tell us a little bit about them and sort of what the comparisons are?
Sure. So this is a company out of Sweden. We mentioned it in our quarterly update called Irisity. Really interesting business. They do very similar activities to what we do. So they do anomaly detection. They are based upon neural networks, which is the AI technology that we're also utilizing. These guys have about double our revenue currently. They're based out of Sweden, as I mentioned, had quite a bit of success in the Nordics and expanding from there. But they're NASDAQ listed, so they're getting fantastic multiples on their revenues and trading at about, almost $250 million valuation right now.
Wow, that's very impressive. I want to talk a little bit about your 4C. You came out with really strong numbers. Tell us a little bit about what makes you excited about the company.
Well, look, we've been quite badly affected by COVID. two sides to that. One, the sentiment effect. So we are very often a new spend for most customers. They're thinking about going into active surveillance. And as you probably know, the last 18 months, anything that has to do with new spend, just because of sentiment, has been largely shut down. So we had a tough time closing orders in the back half of last calendar year. We started the year fresh with some really nice orders as optimism started to come back and the vaccination programs were expanding. But perhaps more important than that, getting orders is not enough for us. We have to go and implement our software to start earning the revenue. So to see the numbers flow through to the top line, you need to implement your solutions. And with COVID, a lot of the sites where we had to go and install the hardware to get our software running were shut down. So it was literally like nobody's coming on site. We're all working from home. There's nothing for you to surveil, stay away kind of thing. So a lot of our orders were delayed. And what's happened in the second quarter of this year, which I've been sort of mentioning in many of my updates, is that we have had this acceleration of rollout. And during the course of that quarter, have grown revenues, quite dramatically, which was really nice to be able to get out to the market and show that, what we've been talking about can actually be implemented.
Matt, fast forward 6 to 12 months. Where do you see the company from there?
Oh, look, we've got a fantastic new product in the pipeline. In fact, we filed a patent for it 2 weeks ago. I mentioned that in the quarterly as well. I'm not a huge fan of patents, generally speaking, in the software space, but this is some pretty exciting tech. We've been doing this for about 11 years now, right? This software development. We really understand what customers need, and this new product we've been building on takes that knowledge and experience, grabs onto the latest platforms that are coming from people like NVIDIA, who build the graphics cards that do the processing for our very intensive AI applications. And we think we're going to really hit our straps as we get into this financial year. It's pretty exciting. And, the team is absolutely humming at Isotana. So, yeah, it's a great place to go to work, really.
Matt, thanks very much for joining us here at Peak TV.
Great to catch up. Thanks, Niv.